there is a strategic interest in making sure that this hemisphere, especially countries like Venezuela, don't get hijacked and taken over by terrorist elements around the world, which is what was happening and is happening, and just free to send narcotics and drugs to the United States to go after our citizens. And the answer is no. And so there's a strategic reason. And by the way, it all goes down. I don't think President Trump's pulled any punches on this. Oil is a very key factor in this. Okay, and with that oil, the United States can help keep oil prices lower, which is good for everybody around the world.
We've been discussing on the programme President Trump's latest threat to Greenland, saying he wants to take it over in the next 3 years. It comes after that raid to seize Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro. He's now appeared in court. And President Trump's also been issuing threats against Cuba and Colombia. But how are those foreign ventures being received by his supporters in the United States? Well, earlier today, the president was addressing Republicans at a retreat in Washington, and he talked of his pride in the US raid on Venezuela at the weekend.
People are saying it goes down with one of the most incredible. It was so complex, 152 airplanes, many. Talk about boots on the ground. We had a lot of boots on the ground. But it was amazing. And think of it, nobody was killed. And on the other side, a lot of people were killed. Unfortunately, I say that, soldiers. Cubans, mostly Cubans, but many killed. And they knew we were coming, and they were protected, and our guys weren't. Our guys are jumping out of helicopters, and you're not protected, and they were, but it was so brilliant.
Well, in his address to party members, President Trump had this warning about the upcoming midterm elections.
You got to win the midterms, because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached. We don't impeach them. You know why? Because they're meaner than we are. We should have impeached Joe Biden for 100 different things. They are mean and smart. But fortunately for you, they have horrible policy.
Well, joining me to discuss President Trump's position further is Hal Lambert. He's a Republican mega donor and a former finance chair of the Texas Republican Party and served on Trump's inaugural committee. Good evening to you, Hal. President Trump did talk about the amazing achievements of the raid by US forces, which resulted in the successful capture of Nicolas Maduro and his wife. Do you think, though, that Republicans are concerned about the extent to which President Trump seems to be prepared to meddle in the affairs of other countries?
I think the vast majority of Republicans support this. There's going to be a handful. Senator Rand Paul's come out, Congressman Massey's come out and said they recommended he get congressional approval for this, which I don't agree with them on that. I think what he did was perfectly legal. But President Trump, this is a real message to the whole bloc of countries like Iran, Russia, and China, and Cuba, who are using places like Venezuela to create havoc across the world, quite frankly. And, they've got vast oil reserves. They've let the equipment just deteriorate massively. They had 8 million people have to leave the country because they were starving and didn't have any funds to do anything. And so, President Trump's just made the decision. We're not going to put up with this anymore. We're not going to put up with these narco-terrorist states that, everyone is in agreement that he stole the last election, and he went in and took him prisoner and is going to put him on trial.
But doesn't it set a dangerous precedent? You talk there about Russia and China and so on, but doesn't it set a dangerous precedent that if you don't like what your neighbouring country is doing, it's fine to just go in there and capture the leader?
Well, I think Russia's already tried that in Ukraine. So, when you say it sets a precedent, they're already doing it. And, you look at the terrorism that Iran does around the world, they're already creating massive amounts of havoc. And so I'm not worried about a precedent on it. I think what it actually shows them is that these countries, if they think they're going to align with China and Russia and be protected, their technology is not as good as the United States technology. So they better think twice about aligning themselves with those two countries.
And we're
And
now
Colombia.
and we're
Yeah.
now hearing that the White House is considering options for taking control of Greenland. I mean, Greenland has a democratically elected parliament and government. It's another NATO country.
Well,
Aren't there concerns about that?
well, and what President Trump has said is he would do it through a democratic process. So Greenland can vote and decide if they want to work with the United States, especially under security agreement. Because at the end of the day, you've got threats from Russia all over the Antarctic that they want to control those areas, especially in the sea. And quite frankly, Denmark's not up to defending it. So the United States is going to have to do it anyway. And I think it'd be better to do it with a full cooperation of Greenland when Denmark's simply not up to do it.
But President Trump, when he was campaigning, talked about wanting to end US involvement in all these endless international wars. Do you think that many of those who supported him on that basis will be concerned about his preoccupation in, that operation in Venezuela, also issuing threats to Cuba, Colombia, and elsewhere?
Well, there is. I will admit there's some concern from certain elements of the Republican Party that, hey, we don't want to get bogged down in these foreign wars. But this is very different. When you look at, say, in Afghanistan, or in Iraq, those are different parts of the world. And, is the strategic interest of the United States really there to create a democracy in Iraq, right, where we spent $2 trillion? I would argue that there's not. But there is a strategic interest in making sure that this hemisphere, especially countries like Venezuela, don't get hijacked and taken over by terrorist elements around the world, which is what was happening and is happening, and just free to send narcotics and drugs to the United States to go after our citizens. And the answer is no. And so there's a strategic reason. And by the way, it all goes down. I don't think President Trump's pulled any punches on this. Oil is a very key factor in this. Okay. And with that oil, the United States can help keep oil prices lower, which is good for everybody around the world.
Yeah, and so, we heard President Trump talking there about those midterm elections that come up later on this year. How do you think this will play in those midterm elections at a time when, as you say, many American voters, just as here in the UK, their big concern is the cost of living?
Well, we're working heavily on that, and gas prices have come down quite a bit. Gas at the pump, the car gas has come down quite a bit in the United States. I think it's going to drop further. You're seeing some economic growth. We had over 4% GDP growth last quarter, so that's going to need to continue. We're going to need to have some economic growth. We're going to have some prices come down, but that'll be a big factor in the midterms, no question about it. But the reality is that the higher prices that we started with under Trump's second term were because of Biden. So yes, people are still feeling those higher prices. Food prices are still high. Housing prices are high, but those were ramped up under Biden. They've slowed. The inflation numbers slowed way down. But it's hard to get the genie back in the bottle when prices have gone up. How do you get prices to come down in specific areas? It's much more difficult.
We're almost out of time, but just briefly, how great do you think is the risk that the Republicans could lose control of one or perhaps even both houses on Congress?
I think the Senate's very unlikely to flip. That'd be a much harder deal for the Democrats to pull off. The House is going to be interesting. Texas is going to pick up 5 Republican seats likely. California tried to counter that by creating 5 Democrat seats, additional seats in California. So it's going to come down to district by district by district. And I think it's going to be close unless we get some serious economic growth here and people feel really good going into November. And we have some good candidates. And then there could be, quite frankly, a real surprise where Republicans pick up seats. It's too early to know either of those right now. I think as we get closer to the summer, we're going to know a lot more.
Hal Lambert, Republican mega donor. Really good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.